crisis of professional sustainability is central to the functionality of modern education. The widespread exhaustion of the teaching force represents a global systemic failure, characterized by the progressive erosion of the human capital upon which learning is built. This chart highlights a significant stress gap. While 33% of the general workforce reports frequent job-related stress, it reaches 62% for K-12 educators. Furthermore, 60% of teachers now meet clinical burnout criteria, suggesting these stressors are structural features. These metrics have replaced the archaic narrative of the resilient educator. In the 2023 to 2024 academic year, approximately 7% of the entire K-12 teaching population chose to resign, citing a level of well-being significantly lower than that of the general adult workforce. Diagnosing this mass exodus as a deficit of individual resilience is a severe organizational error. The evidence points to a structural crisis that necessitates a radical structural overhaul. The educational establishment has largely responded to this crisis with superficial Band-Aid fixes. These include individualized wellness programs, resilience training sessions, and minor perks like Jeans Days. Research into teacher wellness initiatives finds them largely ineffective, with self-care professional development showing negligible significance in reducing burnout. These programs fail by ignoring the profession's material reality. Teachers report working 49 hours per week, 10 hours beyond their contracted requirement. In place of simple occupational fatigue, many educators encounter demoralization. Demoralization is a distinct psychological state where teachers feel they can no longer do what is good, right, and just in their profession. This conflict is driven by the terrors of performativity, the high-stakes testing regimes, and bureaucratic accountability systems that value standardized metrics over meaningful instruction. When these mandates conflict with student needs, the result is chronic moral distress. Prescribing meditation for an unmanageable workload is a form of institutional gaslighting. It attempts to maintain a broken status quo by treating a systemic defect as a failure of individual grit. To address the crisis, we must treat burnout as a specific clinical syndrome rather than a colloquial term for being tired. Clinical burnout is defined by 3 progressive dimensions: emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, viewing students as burdens, and a reduced sense of personal accomplishment. This syndrome carries a biological cost. Chronic stress activates the autonomic nervous system, linked to insomnia, hypertension, chronic headaches, and cardiovascular disease. This clinical burden is not evenly distributed. 74% of female educators report being consistently overwhelmed, compared to 49% of their male counterparts. This is linked to both lower base pay for women and the traditional care burden expected of female professionals. Data from the 2025 State of the American Teacher Survey also reveals a profound racial equity gap in educator well-being. Black and Hispanic educators experience significantly higher rates of job-related stress. Combined with lower pay, these pressures result in higher turnover intentions, 28% for Black teachers and 23% for Hispanic teachers, soaring above the 16% baseline. The education system is currently purging its most diverse talent. This hollowing out directly threatens student success by removing culturally responsive pedagogy from the classroom. Teacher burnout functions as an external contagion, creating a ripple effect that compromises the quality of education for millions of students. Empirical studies involving over 50,000 students demonstrate a consistent negative correlation between teacher burnout and academic achievement. This is driven by instructional withdrawal, where exhausted teachers exert less effort in lesson planning and feedback. Furthermore, the cynicism inherent in depersonalization damages student motivation. Students perceiving their teachers as cynical are less likely to internalize intrinsic reasons for studying. This vicious cycle connects teacher stress to classroom instability. Teacher exhaustion causes poor classroom management, triggering student misbehavior, which further increases teacher stress. The biological evidence is alarming. Teacher burnout is associated with elevated student cortisol levels. Chronically elevated, this stress hormone impairs cognitive function and long-term brain development. An exhausted teacher inadvertently transforms the classroom from a sanctuary of learning into a physiologically stressful environment that actively suppresses cognitive function. The teacher burnout crisis constitutes an economic and institutional catastrophe for school districts. When a teacher leaves the profession, the immediate financial cost to the district ranges from $20,000 to over $30,000 for recruitment and onboarding. Nationwide, teacher turnover costs an estimated $8 billion annually. These funds are diverted from instructional support to cover the constant cycle of replacement. Mid-year vacancies are even more costly, adding a 12% premium for long-term substitutes. Critically, this results in the loss of 32 to 72 instructional days for students. Beyond the financial drain, high turnover destroys institutional memory, the accumulated knowledge of student needs and community relationships that remaining teachers rely on for support. This creates an inequality of experience. High poverty, high turnover schools are forced to rely on a higher proportion of novice teachers, while the accumulated expertise of veteran staff is perpetually depleted. Relying on teacher resilience is a catastrophic organizational strategy that actively defunds public education from the inside out. If individual interventions are insufficient, the architecture of the educational model itself must be redesigned. The industrial age egg crate model of schooling is built on isolation. It forces a single teacher into a single room with a standardized curriculum, a structure increasingly incompatible with the needs of the modern workforce. Contrast this with the Finnish system. American teachers spend an average of 27 hours per week in the classroom, while Finnish teachers spend only 18 to 19 hours. This lighter load allows educators to spend nearly half their time on collaboration. The Finnish system is built on professional trust. There are no high-stakes standardized tests or school inspections. Teachers are granted the societal status of doctors and the autonomy to design their own assessments and instructional methods. In the United States, initiatives like the Next Education Workforce at Arizona State University are attempting to break this cycle of isolation. The mechanics of the new model break the one teacher, one room standard. In the system, teams of educators share student rosters and learning spaces. The new model, or team-based teaching, leverages differentiated roles and mandated team planning time to distribute the administrative burden. By sharing the responsibilities of instruction and classroom management across a team, this model eliminates the all-or-nothing pressure of the isolated classroom. Data from over 150 schools suggests that teachers on these teams have remarkably lower turnover rates. Moving towards these structural shifts requires a political mandate. The 2025 PDK poll found 64% of Americans believe teacher salaries are too low, signaling a growing consensus that the current model is broken. Closing the record 26.9% teacher pay penalty, the relative wage gap between teachers and other college graduates, is the most urgent policy lever for stabilizing the profession. Specific legislative building blocks are currently in motion. In Minnesota, the 2025 agenda focuses on raising minimum salaries and improving pensions, and fully staffing mental health teams to reduce the burden on classroom teachers. These changes are rarely granted voluntarily. They require fierce advocacy. States with strong collective bargaining requirements show significantly higher average salaries, highlighting the role of unions as agents of systemic reform. This labor movement is global. Campaigns like Jordan's Stand Up with the Teacher illustrate the worldwide fight for the rights and professional agency of educators. The future of global education depends on abandoning the performative metrics of the past. We must boldly redesign the system to prioritize the health, autonomy, and compensation of the professionals who build our society's human capital.